Hey guys, Matt Straight Race Cards here, and welcome back to the More Than a Collector podcast, where the hope and goal is to inspire and encourage you along the way as we discover other collectors' stories and find their story as who they are as more than a collector. And today I am over the moon because just two amazing guys have decided to join me. I am so excited to have an awesome discussion with them. And we're going to do something, pretty unique that hasn't been done much before. We are actually going to have a discussion on faith in collecting. And so for anyone that might raise some red flags or, some fear, I would just encourage you that, whether you're a believer or not in the hobby, this is an awesome opportunity. I think there's something to learn wherever you are. So I encourage you, stick around because I know you'll be just super encouraged and inspired by these two guys. I'm going to have them on. We have Jake, Legends Never Die, and Josh making the return back to YouTube, Impact Player Collection. Guys, welcome. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being on.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good, man. Thrilled to be back for the return of Josh and to be on with you, Matt. It's pretty cool, man. Pretty cool.
Yeah, guys. So, before we get rolling, Jake, this is kind of the first time we've gotten to connect. So just super excited to do that. And Josh, it's so good to see you again, brother. But I'd love to hear, for those that I know you guys are like YouTube just legends, and so I'm just grateful you're here. But I'd love to hear from you guys kind of your own collecting, background and journey, how you got to where you are today. And then we'll kind of jump, into a deeper discussion about faith and collecting. But I'd love to kind of hear your background before we dive in.
Go ahead, Josh. It's, your time to shine here, man. Your return. Let's hear it.
My return, right? Right. Well, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. Good to see you again, Jake. It's a pretty normal story for collecting. I started in the mid-'90s with my heyday of collecting as a kid and buying packs and, ripping packs, and fell in love with the sport, baseball, first and foremost, obviously. And the man of the hour during that time for me was Ken Griffey Jr. And as I grew older, transitioned into more of a memorabilia collector. And fast forward to 2017, after I'd been out of the hobby for a little bit, after college and whatnot. My son was 8 years old at the time, and he pulled an Aaron Judge rookie card out of a pack, and it kind of reignited the whole card craze for me. So that's kind of the very shorthand version of, where I was in the hobby as a kid and how I got started again. So
it's awesome, man.
I want to know for me, I started when I was 9 years old, which would have been the year 2000. For those mathematicians out there, you can figure out how old I am. But that's when I started. My paternal grandmother actually collected cards and gave her collection to myself and my brother. Thousands and thousands and thousands of cards. And so one of my first memories of collecting was like sorting all those in teams, like at my living room floor at my house. And putting them in binders and all of that. And that's probably where my love of binders began. But my story is a little bit unique from the standpoint of I'm one of the few collectors that I never stopped. Through middle school, through high school, through college, through dating, through marriage, kids, I've never stopped collecting in some capacity. I was originally a basketball collector, big Tar Heel basketball family. And I kind of transitioned to collecting 09-10 Upper Deck, North Carolina, and sold off a lot of stuff that I'd opened over packs my whole life. Hadn't really bought singles before. Then really got back into the history of the game with baseball. And it just went every direction that I'm in now from there, from Hall of Fame autographs, autographed baseballs, vintage sets, bobbleheads, all the stuff you guys see over on my channel if you're familiar with that. But that's it in a nutshell.
Love it, man. Yeah, I can relate on, being a collector as a kid, but, I didn't have the privilege of, I think it's cool that you've been a collector your whole life. Jake, that's awesome. And obviously, Josh, you've been been at it for some time now. So you guys are clearly seasoned collectors. But tonight I wanted this idea of faith and how it merges with collecting. And I think for me, where I've always struggled with, especially now as an adult, it's like, you have, now in our adult collecting season of life, like you do have, you're asking your mom for, a few bucks to buy at the local card shop. And, there is a little bit more at our disposal. And so like as believers, how do we find this balance of, wanting to collect cards, but also, find this, like, I know like God's word talks about like, not being bought into, materialism and things. You have all these different pieces of scripture that warns us about like being invested in things and how, things will rot away, or, the verse, have you heard like things that will rust and destroy. And so like, as a collector, how do y'all balance your faith in collecting? What does that look like for you guys?
You want to go first, Josh, or me?
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Sure. So I think the biggest thing there, like avoiding the potential pitfall of materialism, is like just like anything else in life. It's about priorities. We've got to keep God first and our faith first, and not let collecting or other hobbies or watching sports or anything else consume our time or take that position in our lives where God should be. I know for me, when I first started my YouTube channel, my wife and I had just gotten engaged not too long before that. And she's like, hey, like, I know you have a YouTube channel and you do that and, spend time with your collection, all that, and that's fine. But maybe you should think about, what you're using your time for. And she literally said the words like, if you're going to spend so much time on that, you need to use it as a platform for the gospel. Mm-hmm. True story. I've never forgotten that. And that's why, the first 2 or 3 years of my channel, I shared a Bible verse almost every single video. And that is morphed into something a little bit different. As you guys know, you're familiar with my channel, but like when I changed my channel name to Legends Never Die, it wasn't just because I'm a big fan of the Sandlot, but it's because I say it in every video, Legends never die. Neither will you if you know Jesus. Trying to constantly keep that out there and make that a priority, even though, yes, I'm here for my collection and the hobby and all of that, always reminding my own self of where my perspective and my priorities should be.
What about you, Josh? And I know I want to say that your handle Impact Player also kind of ties in to this as well, right?
Yeah, actually, that's shortly after my son, pulled the Aaron Judge card and got really big into that whole season in 2017. I kind of looked around for, a vintage type player, to collect, and we looked at Yankees, and all of a sudden I watched the Mickey Mantle funeral, and at that funeral service, Bobby Richardson gave one of the eulogies after Bob Costas, and he presented the gospel and shared the story of how he was a constant force and messenger to Mickey during his lifetime. And Mickey ended up, before he passed away, accepting Christ as a savior. And that story was so inspiring to me because if you know anything about Bobby or his life, he was a complete opposite person, personally, compared to the way Mickey lived his life and many of his teammates. And the fact that they were still such close friends was just a reminder to me that we have to be, as followers of Christ, as disciples to all, all comers, believers and not, to live that out, and because you never know who you're impacting. And obviously, Mickey was being impacted by Bobby, and thankfully, before he passed away, was able to make the decision. But yeah, so Impact Player was based on that. It's his newest autobiography. That was the title. But as far as collecting, I can't even remember the question that you asked.
Just talking about the balance between, collecting
Right.
faith and, navigating materialism and all this stuff that we have to deal with now as collectors.
Yeah, and I can actually be an example of a cautionary tale of what it looks like, because as I was always brought up in the church and accepted Christ as a young kid at that time, right there, you go through trials and tribulations, and through a period of time that I walked through where I drifted away, as my story goes. I actually made some mistakes coming out of high school where I got involved in collecting to a point where it did bring some strife, that I'm still. It's the whole tale of buying what you can afford type thing. But when you're a kid, that was never taught, about credit and this kind of thing. I'm just like, wow, we can just borrow and pay it back later, right? And it's something that it was all done during the time when I had drifted away. But now that I've come back to the faith, over 10, 15 years ago, you still have to pay those past sins, right? But I think it's a good cautionary tale for the collecting community that I can attest to, that it can very easily take over your life without you even realizing it until it's too late. But I'm thankful that I've gone through that because I've grown so much and learning things, going through that process. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's that's not an easy process to go through, that, like, learning as you struggle. I know for me, it wasn't necessarily, my story, it wasn't necessarily like collecting as a kid, in high school, but I put all my worth into relationships in sports, specifically sports, where I was like, man, I, had success there and then put my whole identity and worth into it and just came up short. And then, like, after I rededicated my life to Christ and walked with him, as I got back into the hobby, I can relate to, Josh, of like, I quickly found myself wanting to put my identity and worth of like, oh, well, I got this card, or, oh, well, look at this and that. And so how have you found ways to, like, put your identity in Christ rather than, collect? I know you guys are obviously, have had a lot of success on YouTube and, have had great collecting journeys. Y'all are studs. But how have you put your identity in Christ rather than into your collection or anything else?
Well, I've come to the conclusion, during this process, that I could not participate in this hobby unless I can bring glory to him through it. Right. So, I'm to the point now where he has brought the term and the idea of a minimalistic type life, to the forefront of my mind. Right. So now I'm getting rid of all of the things I've accumulated over the years, right? And limiting it to the things that matter the most, and things that when I show it to somebody else, I can point them to Christ in some way, whether it's an aspect of character that this player or person has, or an event in my life. No matter what, I can't knowingly participate in it any longer without pointing to him, which is the only way I can participate. So that's how I've incorporated it into the entire hobby for me, on my side of things. So
I know a lot of people, even that are non-believers, talk about something, especially related to the YouTube community, talking about how wonderful the relationships and the friendships are, and like how it can connect you to other people. Well, I have always seen it, from that conversation in the early days with my wife, or like, what am I really doing this for? Like, yes, the hobby is a hobby for me and I enjoy it, but ultimately it allows me to connect to other people. And that isn't by accident either. Everything is by God's design. He's sovereign. And it's what we do with those opportunities when we're connected to people that may or may not know Christ. Uh, we have opportunities every day, through our own videos, through the people we interact with because of YouTube and because of the hobby. that we've connected with. Lots of us have each other's phone numbers, and we could choose to never talk about our faith or who Christ is for us and who he can be for others too. We have to constantly make that choice. So I try and remind myself that, the hobby and the relationships that we have are opportunities for an eternal purpose, not a temporary materialistic one.
That's convicting. Yeah, I think about that as well. Of just using, like you said, guys, it's like using, this platform, the fact that we all can connect over a piece of cardboard that we love, that like truly is like, I think it's a wonderful thing. But because of that shared bond, we can use that to, glorify God. We can use that to encourage others in the hobby. And that is such a amazing thing. I think that we often miss the mark and overlook that. I guess as y'all think about your collecting journey and walking with the Lord, can y'all think of any stories how like God has showed up or like moved in your life, or like as you've gotten to encourage other people's lives? Anything that comes to mind?
100%. I know one immediately jumps to mind for me. I'm not going to share his name. He knows who he is if he watches this. Also, for non-believers, it's not about like, I'm going to beat you over the head with a Bible and tell you how horrible you are. Like that's not what Christianity is supposed to be. It's as simple as us showing other people the love of Christ, to show that we're different as we should be. We should reflect Christ to the best of our ability, and talk about him and share the gospel. And ultimately, if we do that, it's nothing that we can accomplish, but God can use those things. We have to be willing to uphold our part of his mission. And I know for a fact, one person that I become friends with on YouTube, who was not a follower of Christ, through hearing me talk about it and a couple other people talk about it on YouTube and mention their faith, he reached out to us directly and started asking a lot of questions, started going to his local church. And he's now a follower of Christ and like taking his wife to church. Something that, may not have happened if that piece of the puzzle, wouldn't have been there for him. If for those of us that follow Christ, we don't know what the opportunities look like or where they may come from, but we do have to be willing to take them when they present themselves. So that's one example I know for me, that just through a silly baseball card YouTube channel that, someone came to know Christ and grow closer to him and, show his family Christ.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think for me, it's actually manifesting itself right now. I stopped making videos regularly. It's been several years.
Too long.
Too long, yeah. Probably
Amen.
early 2020 when I stopped, for obviously many reasons as things were going on in the world. You start, prioritizing, your life and what you're doing. But meeting guys like Matt and Jake and others out there, that's why I'm here. And I think that I'm in God's design. I believe that he brought me to this point right now today to be sitting here with Matt and Jake, to move this conversation forward in the community. I mean, I know a lot of people that are still heavily involved in YouTube, that I look forward to connecting with again. And I can't promise that I'm going to be doing any, regular uploads anytime soon, but having conversations like this, I'm always free to do, and looking forward to where that leads.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, likewise. I'm just grateful that, again, a piece of cardboard can connect, the three of us together. Just like you zoom out and like that really blows my mind that we can have real, deep, honest conversations about life, like much more beyond a card, thanks to, again, a piece of cardboard that connected us. So like, how awesome is that? Like for me, that alone points to the fact that like, man, like God is good. And I'm also reminded of like, hey, like, for anyone listening, it's like, hey, the three of us, clearly we don't have our acts together. Like we've missed the mark a lot, but, there's And I can speak on the three of us, like we're all really just broken dudes who, found Christ, and like that's truly changed our lives, which is why we're having this conversation, because it's really impacted our life in a way that we can't help but share. It's like, why do we talk about our faith on a card collecting channel? Well, it's because it's so entrenched in our lives. Like, we love cards, but we also love our faith, and we wanted to share about it as well. And so as we kind of think about like, what is this? I'd be curious, because man, I just love to get y'all's wisdom on this topic, because I'm still navigating this. And again, guys, for anyone listening, these are all subjects that we're continuing to grow and continuing to learn. And none of us have nailed any of these subjects. But as y'all think about like walking in faith and collecting, like what advice would you give to, believers in the hobby as they navigate collecting with their faith? Is there any words of wisdom that y'all can think of?
I guess to echo some of the things that we've already been talking about, just to highlight them, I guess, is, don't forget who your priority is and should be. Don't let the hobby consume other areas of your life that it shouldn't. Even like with your family, like, you're responsible. All three of us are married. We have kids. We're responsible to our wives and to our children far before we are all the pieces of cardboard that surround at least me and Matt that I can see right now. Right. That's more important. And remember that the things that we're involved in, the things we're connected to, the people we're connected to, those all serve an eternal purpose and should give God glory, even in little ways that we may not think about every day. One example, like full disclosure, I'm a pastor for a living. We have a daycare at our church, and I read Bible stories daily. The kids are at the daycare, the older kids, like preschool kids. And I read the Bible story, and I ask 3 questions, and I give away baseball cards as prizes. Okay, awesome. So win-win for me. I get to tell them about Christ, and I get to encourage them to collect baseball cards. The kids look forward to it. It's even led to like parents asking, like, what are the baseball cards all about? And, they get here, your son, your daughter, listen to a Bible story. They answered a question correctly. That's how they got them. It's been an ongoing thing now for a couple years, but just something little like that. Like, yes, I work at a church, like, duh. But we have little opportunities like that in our lives all the time. We just have to be willing to take advantage of them.
Yeah, I think from my experience, I can kind of echo that and also kind of repeat what something Matt mentioned earlier, which is out of Matthew 6:19 and 20. It says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in or steal," which it's obviously telling us to not put our worth and our value in things of this world, because we're not going to take them with us, right? This is all temporary, and don't fall into the trap that I did as a young guy, that you start putting your worth in things, and when you start acquiring things, and it feels like it's never going to satisfy. We're all built with that need, that desire to worship something. That much we know. And people decide to follow the things of this world, or they follow him. And it's really is a black and white situation. I know people don't like hearing that, but that's the reality of it. And as followers, you asked about the advice for followers of Christ and how they should collect, or my advice would be to get in the Word and read because he tells us how we should view things of this world. Card collecting is an innocent hobby as long as we keep perspective, because every day the minister of thieves, of the lies, Satan wants to distract us and destroy, and he'll use innocent things like baseball cards to totally destroy your life if you let him. So
to summarize something that Josh said there, a mantra that we hear all the time in our community is there's no wrong way to collect. Well, there is for believers. It's if your priorities are out of whack.
Yeah, 100%.
That's convicting, because I feel like, I miss the mark so often. Like we're talking about identity. Like I think one area that I think I miss the mark in, especially, is just this idea of comparison. It's like, man, watching YouTube videos is like, man, you can see absolute fire coming from, all these great collectors. Just go watch one of John Mangini's or Dan's, vintage cards, or name any YouTuber, and you can be jealous of their awesome collection. I think I can find myself like feeling these pangs of like, oh, well, if only I had this, or if only I could get this, then I would be complete. If I could just finish, you fill in the blank. I think of whatever you're working on, and I think that's the trap we fall in. It's like, you might like right now I'm working on a K-line run. It's like, oh, well, once I get the rookie, like, we're good. But it's like, no, I'm going to be on to the next thing. And it's like, oh, well, I'm going to want, it's like, I'm working on the Diamond Stars. Oh, well, I want more Diamond Stars. And so there's just like this never ending cycle. And I think as a believer, I really had to wrestle with that. And it's this concept of, okay, am I okay? Like if the Lord convicted my heart, like, am I okay would I be okay to sell all of my cards? Like if that meant, there was some other opportunity the Lord is calling me to. And I think the bottom line is, as believers, like, yes, like we should have that heart and mindset. Do we have it all the time? No, because we're broken. And, if you're like me, you're jacked up and you got all sorts of issues. But I think that's part of like call it the sanctification process in collecting as believers, is continuing to die to ourselves and not buy into comparison, to not put our identity in cards, and to, like both of you guys said, it's like focus on things above. So, yeah, guys, that's awesome. I'll pivot a little bit to a kind of a fun subject within like collecting. I know we haven't talked about physical cards yet, and I think it'd be fun. As you guys think about like your collection or cards, even, maybe it's a card you want to get. Where I was going was kind of cards you have currently, but are there any cards you would look at and say like, man, this, points to something that has encouraged me in my walk with the Lord, or something like that?
Well, I'm sure that, guys that we know of in professional athletics that have been vocal about their faith always ring true to that. Like I think about, Clayton Kershaw,
my boy
now. Yeah, I know you love Kershaw. He's about to retire and everything, but he's never backed down from sharing his faith. He's been very vocal about that. And despite being a Dodger, I have always admired Kershaw. I know. The evil empire, National League, but whatever.
That's fair.
But like somebody like that, I won't steal what Josh is going to probably add about Bobby Richardson, but like he's an obvious one. I will share one aside story that's sort of related. Like when Josh first started YouTube, I saw like in one of his first videos that he liked Bobby Richardson and why. And I didn't know it at the time. I mean, that's been, almost a decade ago. But I happened to have this like miniature signed home plate of Bobby Richardson. And when I saw like how Josh collected them and why and all that, I'm like, this belongs in his collection. And I sent it to him. And I've never forgot that about Bobby Richardson and his part in like the Mantle story that Josh shared. So those two definitely immediately jumped to mind.
Yeah, and I think along those lines, are we talking about cards we want in the future, or that we already have?
It could be either.
Well, I think for me, it's hard to have a quote unquote grail card because of what we've talked about. But if everything aligned and everything was set, financially, family wise, and it could happen without, hurting any of those priorities. One card that is fairly expensive that I would like, but for different reasons, would be the 49 leaf Jackie Robinson card. And a lot of people chase that card because of, the color barrier and this different things. But a lesser known part of that story is Jackie's faith in that process. And I do believe that God did use Branch, Ricky, and Jackie specifically for that reason. I know that throughout time they've said that Jackie was not the best player at that time, but he was the right one, right? And I think they leave out that part of the story. There's many accounts of the fact that he had to pray daily to give him the strength to go through the things that he did. And that's the kind of things that I would be talking about if I got to show a card like that. Jackie's faith and the fact that God uses people for his purposes, right? And to break that color barrier of something that should have never existed, right? But humans created this idea that there's differences and the skin color, makes you, an obsolete human being, which we know is completely false and foreign to those that follow Christ.
Man, that's a great legacy. I love that it's like, yeah, he was a great baseball player, but there's so much more to that story if we really start to peel back the layers. And the Bobby Richardson, it's kind of funny. Funny story for me. And I texted Drew. I had won a giveaway from a website that was doing a giveaway, and it was like you could select between 5 cards. But I actually missed the opportunity to select what card I wanted, even though I had first pick. Apparently, I didn't see the message for another 10 days, and they're like, "Oh, well, we're actually just sending you a card." And so I ended up getting the 63 Bombers Best Mantle and Richardson card, which I love. And I texted a picture of it to Drew Clean Cheap Shots. And he was like, "Oh, well, have you heard the story of Mantle and Richardson?" And so really, it's only been about a month since I've known that story, and
Wow.
It's totally blown my mind. And what's even more crazy about that story is, Bobby Richardson, encouraged Mickey Mantle while he was in the hospital, and that was while Mantle was in Dallas, where I am. But funny about that is, I actually was born in that hospital. Baylor Hospital, where Mantle came to Christ. So it's just totally full circle, and just my kids were born there, and we've gone through hardships of losing kids, also honestly there. But it's I'm reminded of when I see that card now, it's I'm reminded of some obviously some really hard trials that we've gone through, but I'm also reminded of God's goodness and how he continues to show up. He continues to show up, even the fact that we get to have conversations like this. And so I just love the fact that you can look at a piece of cardboard and, it takes you to, encourage you to something much more than a simple picture of a man on a card.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously that kind of situation and story just points to him. I mean, there's no other way for me to look at something like that, where we meet shortly after you receive a card you didn't know you were getting, and I share the same story with you as that you received from another YouTuber. You can't orchestrate that. So it's a perfect story.
That's awesome, guys. Well, I know there's some other folks that they may not know the Lord or have a faith that somehow made it 34 minutes. If you have, we're grateful for you. Truly humbled. But how would you guys encourage anyone that is wrestling in their faith, that's collecting and trying to ask hard questions, or something like that? What would you say to encourage anyone that's in that boat?
Jesus himself in his ministry didn't walk alone. He walked this earth with 12 other disciples he surrounded himself with and did life with daily. He's literally the Son of God. He didn't need that, but he chose that because it was an important example to set for us. The same reason he created the church. We're not meant to be island Christians and walk through life alone and try and follow Jesus all by ourselves. We're brothers and sisters, and that rings true for the question that Matt just asked. So if you're a person that's in the hobby and you're struggling with these things, don't face it alone. I'm looking at two other guys and myself that would be happy to talk to you about that and share that walk with you and come alongside you, love you, encourage you, support you. And that's true if you're not a believer too. Okay. We would do the same for anyone. That's immediately the first thing that jumped to mind. I mean, that's the whole purpose of why we're even having this conversation, to reach out and love our brothers and sisters that happen to be in this hobby with us.
Yeah, and take it a step further to give you an example of an athlete that has a perfect testimony for the people out there that don't currently share the same faith that we do, and that's totally fine. But another athlete that I like to collect for this very reason is Pete Maravich. His story, I encourage you, highly encourage you to Google or check on YouTube and look up Pete Maravich's testimony, because his life was a perfect example of someone that chased the world and reached the highest amount of success that you could in this world and was totally empty. And the way he describes it and his process of going through that and ultimately finding the Lord was another amazing story to hear, and something that I think everybody would benefit from listening to. In fact, I watched it today before I knew we were going to have this conversation, because I hadn't listened to it in a few years, and it just reconvicted me all over again that it's just a great story and a great testimony. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I have to go back, and you just gave me some great fodder to go. Well, I didn't know that about Maravich, so that fires me up. I remember in my garage as a 7-year-old trying to do all kinds of dribbling tricks to be Pete Maravich, but now there's even more inspiration. Yeah, I think about, for me, it's like I look at, I love looking at other athletes' lives, like you said, Josh. Of like, for me, the whole reason why I started, like, my name is Straight Race Cards, is because the legacy and impact of Eric Little. If anyone's seen the movie Chariots of Fire, and just his testimony to, stand for his faith, even though it was going to cost him a shot at running the 100 meters in the Olympics. And he ultimately changed his race to the 400, and by God's grace, was able to win gold. But it was so much more than him winning the gold medal. It was just this idea that he got to share his faith with the world. And then so that's always been an impact on me, which is why he gave a speech in that movie called like Running the Straight Race. And so for me, it's like I always want to be running the straight race of life after Christ. But for anyone that's like not walking with the Lord, I love what and Jake had to say about community, because we do have all kinds of folks that we can reach out to in the hobby and connect with and encourage each other. It's like, I think anyone's takeaway here is, go find someone in the hobby and encourage them and, have a real conversation. And I think that's what, again, why this hobby is so great, is that, when you can get past that, like, first layer of like the connection of cards, like the cards is great, but like when you go one step further and really start to like, unpack someone's lives and get to really like understand what they're going through. I mean, you can encourage them and you can celebrate like in hobby moments and in life moments. That becomes way more meaningful. And so that's why I love that we get to have conversations like this.
100%.
Well, guys, this has just been awesome. Any final thoughts as we kind of tie a bow to any faith in collecting? Is there any other wisdom that you'll want to share?
One last thing. If you are still with us, I'm sorry, I got a cough again. If you're still with us, you're probably a believer. And if you are, and you're a content creator, and people don't know that you're a Christian, they should.
Yeah, I totally agree with Jake. I mean, we're told not to cover our lamps of and be a light in the world, and so don't hide it. You know, if and we know there's a lot of them, I believe, that are out there. Use that platform, no matter how big or small your channel is, to share him and what he's done in your life. Because at the end of the day, that's why we're here. That's the only reason why any of us as believers are still on this planet is to share him and the promises of his kingdom if you choose to follow him. So yeah, I totally encourage you to reach out to me. I'm obviously not on YouTube a ton anymore, but I'm on it on Instagram, and Jake, knows where to find me. So does Matt, and a lot of guys that have been on YouTube for a long time. I still talk to. So don't be afraid to ask questions. I understand it's something that people haven't reached that point, but we're all going through life together, obviously, and we all face trials and tribulations. But being a follower of Christ, we just have a different answer for the problems instead of looking for the world to answer those. So.
And guys, great stuff. And I'd encourage anyone that hasn't already subscribed to Jake at Legends Never Die, or go find Josh on Instagram. Is it the Impact Player Collection, Josh?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Or you can reach me on email, Matt straightracecards@gmail.com, or my Instagram, Matt Straight Race Cards. And please reach out, guys. We would be overjoyed to connect with you guys, just to create another face in the hobby, or we'd be more than happy to answer any questions or just connect with you and encourage you any way we can. So guys, it has truly been a pleasure. I am so grateful for you guys. Y'all inspire me in my walk with Christ, and just to be, a more impactful and more meaningful creator in the hobby, to use this wonderful platform for Christ's glory. So just want to say thank you guys for continuing to put that on display for so many years. So thank you guys.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Good on you for doing this.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys. Hope you all can catch this episode as well as future episodes of More Than a Collector. I'd love to hear y'all's stories. So if you have any interest in, hearing, sharing your story, it doesn't have to be about faith, but I'd just love to hear your story about, where you are at in collecting. I'd love to hear it. So please reach out, and thank you, everyone, and keep running the straight race.